Welcome to all the lads, ladies, and MDs that are watching this. My name is Aditi Nambutiri, and I am the host for today's interview. So, our guest of honor today is an upcoming author, Mr. Brighton Hug. Am I right? Did I get it right? Right.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. So, could we have an introduction from you for the viewers, please?
All right. So I'm a Canadian-based writer who spent my childhood living out of Canada, and I try to write however often I can. Sometimes I get distracted, and I really hope that I can make a future out of my literature.
Oh, that's great. So the first question that I would like to ask is a pretty basic and straightforward one, honestly. So, what inspires you to write?
Ooh, what inspires me? I guess there's a lot of things that I can pull inspiration from, but I think what I found was the main reason why I write is in order to share like the way I see the world with the others around me, because reading and writing, it's more than just words on a paper. It's this connection we have between the writer and the reader. And depending on how personal the text can be, like so much can be communicated in an empathetic and compassionate way.
Oh, definitely. So when you are writing, do you see yourself as like an established like a novel author, or do you see yourself as a blogger or like a writer in general, or do you see it like yourself as all of the above when it comes to your writing?
I'm a bit all of the above. I always try to, I guess, expand my portfolio the most possible. Like, I write poems, I write short stories, flash fiction. I'm working on a novelette, which is like a novel but shorter.
Ah,
And yeah, I just try and do whatever I can.
right, that's great. So when did you first realize like you wanted to go in this direction as an author, as a writer in general?
When I was young, I used to be fascinated by how the people who wrote books could take their imagination and share it with me and create something that I could imagine myself. And I guess what really kicked off my writing was in grade one, my teacher gave us journals that we had to write stories in, and I loved it so much that I started writing my own stories at home.
Oh, damn. So was it just original stories that you used to write? Like,
Yeah, they were like short comedic pieces. I read some of them recently, and they are certainly interesting.
oh, right. For me, like if I look at the stuff that I have written before, I just feel cringe. Like, I really did write
Yes.
these. Is it? It's like, where did I get the courage to even post them to like show it to the outside world? So certainly, it is definitely it's an interesting need. So, what are your favorite genres to like write about, like in the fiction department?
I really like action and comedy. Those are those are what I started with. I always used to write like random funny pieces with a bit of action, but as I get older, I'm starting to add more elements of drama and interpersonal relationships within my stories. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to focus more on, I guess, my favorite genre is described as based around the characters instead of around the plot.
So you are now, you want to focus more on people, like character development rather than the plot development, if I put it correctly. Is that it?
Yes.
Right. So, are there any genres like, that you have not tried before, but you would like to try out in the future, maybe experiment with?
Yes. Uh, Science fiction. I really like the whole like idea of speculative fiction where you create wonderful futures and or even dark futures, just fantastical like scientific futures. they just interest me so much, but I don't know. I've never known how to get the right tone and make it feel realistic enough.
Oh, that yeah, that is sounds like anything. I guess it requires a lot of like research at the very least, right? So when
Yes.
you talk about science fiction, like say Marvel is considered like science fiction, right? So do you want to write something like along those lines, or you want to try different, like something subversive?
Um, I'm thinking with similar to George Orwell, not in the sense that it's all dark and depressing, but in the sense that by telling the future in the way he sees it can be, it really speaks to us about who we are as human beings. So I want to create stories that kind of tell us like what it means to be human, but within like this future world where everything is not as we see it now.
Right, right. Even I hold like George Orwell to a great esteem. Like when I was younger, I
Yeah.
read his work, Animal Farm. So when you read it at a young age, like say 10 or something, you're too young to like really get like what he's trying to say. So I was very baffled by the ending. Like,
Yes.
oh, okay, didn't end happily. What? So what is going on? And then I look back and I see, okay, this is what he was trying to say. So I take it George Orwell is one of your favorite authors.
Uh, I wouldn't say he's my favorite, but I really appreciate the amount of symbolism he has within his works.
Indeed, that is something you appreciate again, as I said, in an older mean. So, are there any novels of his that stand out to you the most?
Like novels in general?
Yeah, his novels, as in his works. Like 1984, Animal Farm.
Oh, right. I guess yeah. The two classics, 1984 and Animal Farm. Just the way they are so truthful yet they're fiction at the same time. It's really fascinating, especially there's always like you can see parallels in certain things that happen today, even if it's just small things. But like I don't believe that we'll ever get to a future where Big Brother will always be watching us, but there's certainly elements where people tell you, I guess, to watch what you think. It's very
Mm,
interesting.
indeed. So you had mentioned that you are working on a novel, right? So could you tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about like what's it about?
Sure. A drama mystery series.
Mm,
Uh, it's about it's about a group of friends who formed a writing club, but one of the members had one of their poems sabotaged and insulted by one of the members, but they didn't know who it was because they just took her notebook and scribbled over the poem. So the main character and two of his closest friends are trying to work together in order to find out who the culprit was before the group totally dissipates because uh, they get in arguments, and just the fact that someone in the group was evil enough to destroy someone's poem starts tearing them apart. So they have to battle against, I guess, their own arguments within themselves in order to try to bring everyone back together.
I see. So you are, yeah, it would be your debut work. Is that it?
Uh, yeah, I guess so. It'll be my first piece of fiction that will come in multiple parts, and I'm gonna start. I'm going to use it to help show what well, I guess I'm gonna post it on a website called Comiful because they're thinking of introducing a feature where you can put stories in a series, and I'm really excited to try that out. So I want to kick it off by sharing this novelette that I'm working on.
Oh, that is great. Do we have a name for the novel?
Yes, it's called Poetic Justice.
That is quite apt. So the you have mentioned that it
Yes.
is going to be released like as a series. So is it similar to like how
Yeah.
traditionally novels are published like in a series, like there are trilogies, duologies? So is it like that, or is it a serialized novel?
It's more of a serialized novel, so it has about 11 parts so far, and each part is between 500 and 1,500 words. So it's very short, like quick parts that kind of get you hooked and then leave you on a cliffhanger.
Oh, that really fulfills the whole concept of it. So, as a follow up to the next question, have you ever considered like publishing in a traditional sphere? Like, as I mentioned earlier, like a trilogy or a duology, like if for any future works, have you ever considered it?
I have. In fact, I'm working on a chapbook, which is like a poetry book but shorter. But I've been stuck. Like, I'm so close to getting it published, but I haven't decided on a title or a cover for it.
Ah, that is the worst part to any book is finding a title that is
Yes.
uh, but so, what would you like? What are the like differences that you have seen, like the between like traditionally publishing and the way and online serial publishing? Like, what do you think are like the benefits that made you like gravitate to online publishing more, like on Comma Food?
Right. With online publishing, it just feels, I guess, when you're young, it's so much better to start by sharing your work for free because in a way it's how you gain your initial audience and it's how you start showing the world who you are as an author. And the people I've met from posting online, it's really been fantastic. There's so many amazing people who always they comment on my work, they like talk on Discord channels and stuff like that. It just feels like it's yeah, quite a community. But once you get to publishing traditionally, it starts to get harder and harder to build that community.
Yeah, there is that. I think it's a good way of like with especially in online, people are able to connect with each other faster. So at least that way you can promote it
Yes.
better. So yes, indeed. So now talking about poetry, I have a huge respect for poets because poetry is another level of writing. I have tried my hand in it, and I feel like I never match up to like what other what poets, both established and the rookie ones, have been doing. So, what inspires you when you write poetry, like your muse? Let's say.
I really like to create rhyme and rhythm. Like I one time in English class, I was reading a poem and it felt like it bounced along.
Mhm.
And ever since then, I've tried so hard to make my poetry seem like a song. But what's difficult about it is you have to say this message. You have to take what you feel, which is like this abstract thought, and put it into words, but a specific type of words so that it not only rhymes, but it has this like song like rhythm. So I
Right.
really
Yeah,
love the challenge.
definitely.
Yeah.
So, do you think you have a certain style when it comes to the poems that you write?
Yes, I've definitely noticed. I always feel like my poems are very similar to each other. Like I was reading over some because I wanted to submit them to magazines, and there are some poems where it feels like I just rewrote a poem that I wrote in the past. I
Mhm.
even sometimes accidentally copy the same lines. So I definitely think if someone were to have read my like some of my poems and saw a new one, they'd recognize it as my own style.
Mm. So when it comes to writing, like say both poetry, okay, like let's take poetry as for first. When it comes to writing it, so like what is your thinking process when it comes to writing? So like, does it? Do you have like ever sit down and try to like write lines, or is it like it just comes to you when at like the most random moment, say, and then you try to jot it down? Is it like that? So how would you describe it, your writing process?
It's a bit of a mix of both. Sometimes I get this idea in a random time and I run and grab one of my small notebooks and write the idea. But then later I sit down and I concentrate if there's something like if someone's watching a movie in the house, or since my mom teaches online but really late at night because she teaches in Myanmar and lives in Canada, I always put on noise canceling headphones with soothing music and just sit down, ignore everyone, and take those ideas and finally like write them into something that is full and real.
Comes to your writing process, like with your novelette or like any of the one that you're publishing right now. So is it the same thing, like the same process, like when it comes to poetry? So how does it work? So like when you get inspiration, how do you plan out everything?
Right. So the entire idea for the novelette, it stemmed off of there was a romantic side plot idea that I had, and I really wanted to implement it into something. And I was thinking about it, and then I figured, like, I found a way that it could work
Mhm.
and create a dramatic story. So I made the general outline in a few points, and then started writing the first part. And when I wrote the first part, I thought of what would happen in the next four parts. And while I was writing, that was when all the planning for the future like started to come into place.
Oh, that is great. So, so it is. Does it ever overwhelm you? Like when you're writing a scene, and like you said, like when you write a scene, you come up with ideas for future scenes, right? So, do you ever come like? Does it ever come like at a point you get writer's block because you have so many things to do, and yet you're not able to translate it? Does it ever happen like that?
Yes, definitely. There's times where say I want to write a poem, but like I have a million ideas, or I'm trying to write a say my novelette project, but I want to write a poem at the time. It's there's always like I guess there's so much to write, but not enough time to write it. Sometimes I even have ideas that work faster than my hand can write, so I start forgetting them and then losing interest in writing at the time.
Oh, definitely. So, when you hit a situation like that, so how do you work? What do you do in order to overcome it, or at least to get at least a few lines out?
Um Sometimes I just sit and wait it out, but lately I've I got distracted by researching like something completely unrelated to writing, but just yesterday a deadline came up. I had submitted poems for a literary journal and they wanted me to write a poem to put on the back cover. And like 2 months had passed since they asked me to do that. And they just emailed me yesterday, like, yo, did you do any thinking of that poem? And I was like, ah.
Oh,
So I sat down. I made sure I didn't do anything distracting before I started writing the poem. Like I put away my phone, put away my computer. Well, I guess I didn't put away my phone because I was listening to music. And I just sat and thought of a first line and a general idea. And once I had that, like the poem came out so well that I couldn't have done it better, even if I had taken the months to like think about it and mull it over.
oh, now that there's a happy ending to that. So, so it's
Yeah.
like, how has it been? Like, have you been submitting poems to like local newspapers or journals like since a young age? Like, tell us about your literary process. throughout your life?
Ooh. When I was young, um, I used to just write and then not share it with anyone, or I guess I'd share it with my parents. But as I started going in like higher grades, I remember my grade 8 ELA teacher really liked one of the stories that I wrote. So I thought, man, I want to post that online. So so I searched up, found a website, and it got 20 reads on that website, and I thought I was famous. I was like awestruck. So I took everything that I'd written in the past and I posted it. And about a year and a half after that, I found Comiful, which uh by that time on the other website I was writing mainly fiction, and I was starting to feel like I had written every story that I could have at the time. But then when Comiful came along, it inspired me to start writing poetry. And right before I graduated was when I started trying to share it more officially. Like the first magazine I was in was called Teen Ink. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, it was interesting because I wasn't expecting the thing that they published to actually be published by them. It was shocking. But otherwise, for other magazines, I've I'm very new to the journey of like professionally being published in magazines.
Oh, so but do you do you plan on submitting like so what is your future aside from the novel? Are there like any future plans to be submitting into like more well-known journals, or like do you have a specific ambition in that sense?
Yeah, I definitely want to start being published in places that actually pay, because
Mhm.
it's it's a challenge. It's a thrilling challenge to see if my stories can be like worth sharing in print on paper with, say, a magazine with thousands of followers. It I would just be awestruck. So yeah, I am working on that. I'm working on a list of 12 places to submit,
Mhm.
because apparently there's a rule of 12. If you submit to 12, you'll get accepted to at least one, hopefully.
Definitely. The
And
more.
yeah, I'm also submitting to a contest where the theme is space pirates.
Oh, now there is an interesting genre. So, what is
Yeah.
the best thing that what is the best your strength? What are your strengths when it comes to writing? Like if you look at yourself, self-assess yourself.
My strengths. I would say my greatest strength is uh when writing poetry, my greatest strength is rhythm and rhyme. I feel like it just comes natural to me. Like it used to I used to have to sit down and think and like reread lines, but now when I write poetry, just the rhyme and the rhythm just comes so naturally. But when it comes to fiction, oh boy, I think my strength is being able to write a first draft really fast. Cuz the ideas, they just come to me and I write as fast as I can in my notebook, and yeah, in such a short amount of time I have a first draft. It's garbage, but I mean, I can fix it later.
Yes, exactly. So similarly, like what do you think are the areas where you can improve both in regards to writing poetry and in fiction?
Like the areas of improvement?
Yeah, areas where you think you can improve in your writing.
Yeah. In poetry, what I'm really working on improving is starting to make, I guess, more balanced poetry, because I always used to either write something super depressing that often doesn't match with what I feel, but sometimes the poem just goes that way, or something ridiculously optimistic that is like kind of a pick me up. But I want to start creating things that have a healthy middle ground so that it's not always like one day I'll be like everything's great and the next day I'll be like everything is terrible.
Oh, that is definitely. And in terms of fiction,
Yeah.
like literally.
For fiction, I always find when I read my writing that it's at times impersonal. Like, I find when I'm explaining emotions, instead of explaining how the person is feeling exactly, I'm just explaining kind of what they look like. Or say someone's crying or someone's sad, I'll be like, this character was sad because sadness happened, instead of like going deep into it and explaining exactly how they're feeling.
Ah, I see. I have a lot more questions that I would want to ask you, but unfortunately, we are nearing the end of our session. So this is going to be the last question for today. What is like as a writer yourself who has experience now? Do you have any advice that you would like to share with rookie writers?
Sure, yeah. My best advice is no matter what, don't give up and make sure you believe in yourself, because there have been so many times where I thought, what am I doing this for? Like, I can't achieve anything. I'm not happy with my own work. But the more I worked on it, the more I improved, and the more exciting it got to share the stories that I wrote with the world. Because no matter how difficult it seems, it will get better.
Oh, definitely. So, thank you so much for taking the time to attend this interview. So, folks, this is Aditi Nambutiri interviewing Mr. Brighton Hug, who is currently publishing his serialized novelette, Poetic Justice. Please make sure to read and subscribe to him and follow him as well. Thank you once again for attending this interview.
Yes, thank you for organizing it.